Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. First, want to tell each of you that appreciate you being here and being in front of this committee today. Also see several Alabamians here in the hearing and want to say welcome. Glad you're here and thank you for all that you do for our great state. Mr. Connor and Lieutenant General Spellman, I would first like to follow up on what we discussed at last year's hearing. We discussed different ways that the port, like the Port of Mobile, should be able to use their port energy funds. I was going through the work plan that you released earlier this week and read the section identifying the expanded uses and activities for these port energy funds. I'd like to thank you both for following through on your commitment to re-examining the capabilities for ports to use these funds for channel, berth, and other dredged material management activities. I would also like to take this time to thank Brigadier General Hibner's team with the South Atlantic Division, and specifically Colonel Chapman's team at the Mobile District for their actions to gather the necessary funding to rapidly begin and soon complete the repairs to the lock in Demopolis, Alabama. I have really been blown away by everyone's willingness to work together to achieve that goal and get the lock back open. Colonel Chapman's team has been very responsive both to myself and my team over the last few months following the lock's failure, and it's exactly the way that this should operate. Mr. Connor or Lieutenant General Spellman, I understand that traffic is set to return to the Demopolis lock within the next 2 weeks. Do you all foresee any impediments to that? And with the lock reopening, I want to see if you feel like it will be on time.
No, great question, Senator. We're on track to complete all of our work by the 30th of May, 30th of this month.
Okay, excellent. It's wonderful news. It's great when we can do things on time. I think it saves money, saves energy, and it's certainly vitally important to the economics of that entire region and beyond. So thank you so much. It's great news to hear. I also want to speak about another project, the Mobile Harbor Deepening Project, which I understand is on schedule for completion March 30th of 2025. So just under a year. Last year, I think, Mr. Connor, I think you visited the Port of Mobile immediately prior to this hearing. You told me you believe the project was going to be completed on time. Question for both of you here. Do you still expect that project to be completed on time?
Senator, last contract will be awarded next month, and we're on track to complete this work in March of 2025.
That is wonderful. I have noticed obviously a theme and have discussed this with Colonel Chapman, but fully funding major projects at the beginning results in projects being completed on time and raises the likelihood that projects remain on budget or potentially in some cases under budget. As of today, the Mobile Harbor Ship Channel Widening and Deepening project, which was fully funded at the start by the federal government, which obviously some in the media irresponsibly and falsely reported otherwise, but it is both on time and on budget. On this, in 2023, for the first time in years, Chair Murray and Vice Chair Collins led the Senate Appropriations Committee in public markups and advanced all 12 bills by July 27th. I am grateful for both of their leadership and making this a priority. Unfortunately, it took 174 days, though, after the fiscal year to get all 12 appropriations bills signed into law, and it was actually 236 days since this Appropriations Committee actually did their work. Mr. Connor and Lieutenant General Spellman, do endless continuing resolutions raise the cost, and some people know them as CRs, but do they raise the cost and length of the timeliness for major projects? And would a return to more regular order, this body doing its job on time for the American people, allow the Corps to be more responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars?
Senator Britt, thank you for the question. Yes, the continuing resolutions process makes it very hard to complete the work that we're trying to accomplish. As a threshold matter, I would just acknowledge what full funding, obviously most optimum, very significant funding for blocks of work like Howard Hansen Dam, which we need to do, obviously creates significant efficiencies and allow us to move through the most complex aspects of our work. And CRs are the worst part of that spectrum of how we fund things. We have those projects that aren't fully funded are typically base plus option type contracts, and then we start chasing options as to whether we can pick them or not up or not if we're in continuing resolutions. If we don't pick them up, they get rebid. Chances are that the cost will be
That's right.
significantly higher and that labor will go elsewhere.
Madam Chairman, would you allow me just one more minute? I am so grateful for you saying that. I mean, these women have led this committee in a remarkable way, and it is ultimately the hardworking Americans that pay the price when the body does not do its work, when Congress does not pass these bills on time. And so I appreciate you speaking directly to that, because when you rebid something, everybody knows that price does not go down, it goes up. So not only do you not have the predictability you need, it ultimately costs the taxpayer more. And two things I just wanted to make sure that that I mentioned before I conclude. First is the Wilson Lock in Florence, Alabama. It lost buoyancy and sank to the bottom of the reservoir. I understand that TVA is pursuing interim solutions, but I think it's extremely important that we work together and examine all possible routes for a permanent repair to the guide wall. And then second, the Selma Flood Risk Mitigation Project. It would construct a wall along the bank of the Alabama River, and we all know that Selma is not just a crown jewel of Alabama, it is a crown jewel with historic nature for our entire country. And so making sure that we prevent the river from further eroding the bank and causing historic buildings to fall into the water. This project's very important to me. It's also very important to Congresswoman Sewell. And the floods threaten a nationally registered historic district, and we look forward to working with you all on making sure that we get this right. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chairwoman.